Thank you so much. We're always privileged and honored and delighted to have you, David. So thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm Kathie Libby, and I will be your platform assistant for today. And what a wonderful program. I mean, I always think that way, but I especially think today what a wonderful program we have. Our beloved Cheryl Welsh-Charrier is going to speak on narrow mind, spacious mind, which I'm fascinated to hear what that's going to be about. So thank you very much, Cheryl. But both the centering prayer and the closing prayer are short prayers, but then they have a question for us to carry forward with us. So time teaches and time disappears. The purpose of time is not accumulation. The purpose of time is to alert us to ourselves so that we can become the only thing it is really worth our time to be, a totally human, deeply spiritual human being. And the question to carry forward, how can I become more deeply spiritual human being?
And thank you, David. So grateful to be the speaker this morning, honored indeed. The title of my talk is Narrow Mind, Spacious Mind. And I'm going to begin with Rumi's The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome them and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So the idea for this talk came to me from the book Surrendered by Rabbi Rami Shapiro, in which he talks about meing and I-ing. Me is the narrow mind, which is about having, and I is the spacious mind, which is about being. Similarly, Father Richard Rohr in Everything is a Gift talks about calculable mind and contemplative mind, which he calls two different types of software. And Imelda Shanklin calls it the personal self and the impersonal self. So which are we blessed with? Narrow, calculable, personal mind, or spacious, contemplative, impersonal mind? And why would narrow, calculable, personable mind be a blessing? Our lives are small when we are. And this could be where narrow mind begins, fostered by those who are doing the best job they know how to raise us. There are lots of rules as we learn to navigate life. What do we do when we cross the street? Hold hands. No, we can't cross unless you hold my hand. Don't accept anything from strangers on the street. Be home by 11 or you'll be grounded for the rest of the week. At this stage of life, the rules help protect us and keep us safe, which makes them a blessing. When we got a little older and were hell-bent on bending the rules to establish our independence, were we opening to spacious mind? Probably not. Do some of these rules create fears in us? Most definitely, yes. The me of narrow mind represents all the negative aspects of ego because it's all about me. Now let's talk about you. What do you think about me? In 12-step programs, we have lots of acronyms, and the one for ego is edging God out. Early on in life, we probably don't know that we're doing that. Spacious mind involves a spiritual awakening, which can happen in an instant or be a journey over time. My experience is the journey, which is ongoing and requires letting go of lots of preconceived ideas about life. Our Lenten booklet for February 26th said, letting go is a learned action from a lifelong journey of self-acceptance, revealed as a process that evokes our trust in the messiness of living with some experience of joy, sorrow, and disappointment, wrapped up in a bit of love. We learn to trust the movement of spirit, creating the masterpiece that is you and me. Lots of unexpected visitors to welcome. And life does tend to be messy and sometimes chaotic and sometimes thrilling and often joyous and hopefully most of the time peaceful and serene. Rabbi Shapiro says, you don't come to this cosmic religious feeling out of fear or reasoned logic. You come to it out of intuition. A knowing simply arises effortlessly and you just know it's true. Returning to Father Richard, growing up and learning to navigate life, we're often calculating what's appropriate or what's right and what's wrong and what's socially acceptable in different situations. We're always trying to figure it out and making plenty of mistakes along the way, which can run the gamut from embarrassing to just plain shameful. When we begin to awaken spiritually, moving into spacious, contemplative, impersonal mind, there's often a lot of wobbling back and forth. As we progress on our journey, we hopefully become aware that we're wobbling. I don't know about the rest of you, but I still wobble more often than I would like. The true self is who you are in God and who God is in you. Father Richard. You are an idea in the mind of God, Imelda Shanklin. And the mind of God pushes us to express ourselves by changing our thoughts for the better. One of the things that may contribute to living in narrow mind is what Eric Butterworth calls a God up there attitude. He also says that we are praying animals, that prayer is a natural function of life. This would then mean that spacious mind is a natural function of life. In The Universe's Calling, he says, prayer is not trying to reach for God, not even to reach God. It is giving up the very desire to reach God. He goes on to say, when we appeal to God, our prayer becomes a performance that we're putting on for God, and that God is not something to pray to, but a depth of awareness and energy to pray from. In Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach says that what we experience as the self is an aggregate of familiar thoughts, emotions, and patterns of behavior. The mind binds these together, creating a story about a personal individual entity that has continuity through time. Everything we experience is subsumed into this story of self and becomes my experience. I am afraid. This is my desire. We interpret everything we think and feel and everything that happens to us as in some way belonging to or caused by a self. Jackie Woodside addressed this in her talk on February 12th. She talked about living from the inside out and being responsible for our reactions and actions. And stop asking why, because it's a disempowering question that you'll never know the answer to. Several decades ago, I actually did get an answer to the question, why does this keep happening to me? The answer, because you allow it. Oh my God, I do. Had changed the way I related to certain things in my life, especially looking outside myself for rescue and guidance from something or someone. Anytime we attach an absolute to something, we're practicing narrow mind. I'm always right. I'm never right. I don't understand and never will. If I can't do it perfectly, I'm not even going to try. You get the gist. In a conversation Rabbi Shapiro had with Father Thomas Keating, Father Thomas talked about how he understood Jesus' teaching. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Matthew 7, verse 7. First, let me tell you what it doesn't mean, he said to me. Doesn't mean ask and in time God will answer you. Doesn't mean seek and over time you will find what you're seeking. Doesn't mean knock and wait and in a moment or two the door will be open for you. Translations that insert time into this teaching are missing the point of the teaching. What Jesus is saying is this: asking is the answer. Seeking is finding. Knocking is opening. There's no time lag. It all happens of a piece in the moment. When we arrive at this realization, we've moved into spacious, contemplative, impersonal mind. We've knocked and the door has been open. We've moved into being instead of having. For me, this resonates with Reverend Sandy's, be still, no oneness, affirm truth, affirm truth. Rigid adherence to dogma and various kinds of rules of life are not conducive to change. And there's one thing that we can be sure about in life, it's that change. Things are always changing. Change is inevitable. The daily word for March 10th said, I am always growing, always changing. The very nature of life is change. Integral to this change is the clearing out of the old to make way for the new. And our March 13th Lenten reading was about letting go of the fear of change. Difficult as it might be, change is the only thing that's permanent in life. When we become comfortable with this, we're able to go with the flow. Turns out the phrase, go with the flow, is more than just a flippant phrase to behave like all the others around us were behaving, whatever that might be. To quote Eric Butterworth yet again, living in a state of grace can mean nothing more nor less than living in a disciplined awareness of the divine flow. God's flow is constant. Our experience of it changes with our consciousness, and that's in the universe's calling. Living in a disciplined awareness. Aha. There's that word discipline. You mean I need to discipline myself to accomplish this? Get in the flow or else? I like to think of it more as becoming consciously aware and choosing to be in the flow. It's not uncommon for us to vacillate between wanting to experience the changes that are coming and wanting everything to be just so. The messiness or chaos removes us from what we think is our comfort zone, and that's probably a good thing. In Reverend Sandy's prayer workshop, she held out Eric Butterworth's The Universe is Calling and said, if you haven't read it, read it. If you have read it, reread it. Being a good student, I immediately got out the wrong book and started reading In the Flow of Life, which turned out to be entirely in divine order. However, I did finally get out The University is Calling and do the university. The universe is calling, and do recommend reading or rereading it, especially chapters 6 and 7. Relax, let go, let God, and The Way of the Silence. Butterworth says in the Flow, you are about to embark upon an adventure between mind and spirit. It could be the most important journey in consciousness you have ever taken. It should be inspiring. It is intended to be challenging. You may also find it disturbing. Let those guests in and welcome them and sign me up again and again, because I forget and need to be reminded. It's easy to say the words, I'm living my life from within out, but is it true? Let's take a deep breath and ask that question of ourselves. Am I living my life from within out? My answer is some days yes and some days no. Some hours yes and some hours no. It's easy to say the words, I'm God manifest as Cheryl. But do I truly feel that and know it in my heart? Well, yes, I think my heart knows it. It's my mind that gets confused or possibly rebellious and certainly in the way. Rabbi Shapiro says that facing the truth of our feelings without being attached to the me that identifies with those feelings, you act for the flourishing of all at the expense of none. This is not a choice. This is not weighing options. This is seeing so clearly that the best option remains, which means it's no longer an option at all. The middle of Reverend Sandy's affirmative prayer process is know oneness. When we know oneness, our minds are spacious, embracing all of life because we're in the flow of life. The universe is always calling us, but are we listening? Perhaps we're still listening to the fears that limit us. Often we limit ourselves by thinking we need to set aside a special place where we pray and meditate, which Butterworth calls the equipment of prayer. And that's okay, but we don't need to be limited by that. Imelda Shanklin says, but do not depend on special conditions. You will have to learn to be in conscious contact at all times. Spiritually, you are always connected. A story in Drop the Rock puts it this way. I do not limit my prayers to a certain time or a particular place. Whenever a small success enters my life or a moment of joy illuminates my day, I silently thank God for those blessings. Every time I affirm God as the source of my good, and give thanks for the many channels through which it comes, I am praying to God. What are you grateful for in this moment? Butterworth says the dynamic of prayer is that when you enter into thine inner chamber and shut the door, it's from Matthew 6, verse 6, you enter the realm of spiritual consciousness where the higher law of spirit overrides or supersedes the lower law of the mental and physical realms. Imelda Shanklin points out that our consciousness is our life, and if we're focused on lack and limitation, guess what we'll experience? Because our thoughts are prayers. In the Science of God realization, Roy Eugene Davis ends the text with an affirmation saying, speak these words with conviction. After our thoughts are prayers, Jan is going to put up a slide with the affirmation. We'll say it through twice and then go into the silence. So we'll say this through twice while I'm mute. I know I am an immortal spiritual being with all knowledge of infinite consciousness and the processes of life within me. Established in this understanding, I think rationally, act wisely, and live skillfully and effectively. And again, I know I am an immortal spiritual being with all knowledge of infinite consciousness and the processes of life within me. Established in this understanding, I think rationally, act wisely, and live skillfully and effectively. And now let's go into the silence for a couple of minutes. I am an idea in the mind of God. I let God's idea express in me. I am the mind of God. I let the mind of God inform me of my identity. My body is the substance of God, manifesting in correspondence with God's ideas. And so it is, and so it will always be.
And again, a very brief closing prayer with a question that we can carry forward with us. If I have been of service, if I have glimpsed more of the nature and essence of ultimate good, if I am inspired to reach wider horizons of thought and action, if I am at peace with myself, it has been a successful day. And the question to carry forward, what brings me peace? When do I consider my day successful?
We are so blessed here at Unity Center DC for extraordinary speakers, talented musicians who share with us each week their God gift, their message, their inspiration. And for us as recipients, I'd like you to take this moment and be grateful. If you want to express your gratitude by giving a gift to Unity Center DC, it's possible. We'll put up on the screen the options, but you can give online, you can mail a cash or a check to the address you'll see on the screen, so that we can continue this ministry, which has blessed us all. Thank you.